Which barbarian is the best barbarian, and which is the worst? This week we rank each of the barbarian archetypes to decide which one is a raging success, and which one is a little bit reckless. Hello players and GMs, I am Reese, and welcome to another video by Jetpack7. Before we get started today, I just want to remind you to please like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Even if you think I'm totally wrong, let me know in the comments. Who knows, maybe I'll make another video saying how wrong I was. So, there has always been a debate about which archetypes are the best for each class, so I decided to take a look at each of them in depth and really decide for myself. In this series, I'm going to make a video for each class analyzing each of their archetypes and finally settling the debate, until a bunch of people come on the comments and disagree with me. The only class I won't be doing is the Artificer, because I've already done a much longer video about that entire class and all of its archetypes, so I don't want to be too redundant. So go ahead and go watch that one if you haven't already. I'll put the link in the description for that. For this series, I'm looking at the overall strength of the class features, not just how much they hold up in combat, but how impactful they might be in a campaign as a whole. There are some archetypes that are specialized for out of combat and can be absolutely incredible in the out of combat situations, so pigeonholing them for combat just wouldn't really do them justice. For order, I figured the easiest way to do these videos would just to be in alphabetical order, so we are starting with the ragiest, muscliest, and brawliest class in 5e, the Barbarian. The truest tank class 5e has to offer. Each of the barbarian archetypes has either some way of adding to that tankiness, adding damage, or adding utility to their kit. I think all of the barbarian archetypes are really great. It is one of my favorite classes to play, despite the number of times I have said how much I hate just running up and hitting stuff in combat. And that's largely because each of the barbarian archetypes add a pretty distinct playstyle once you get into the nitty-gritty. But even though I love each of the archetypes, one of them has to be the worst, so let's go ahead and start off with what is, in my opinion, the weakest of the bunch, the path of the Ancestral Guardian. The Ancestral Guardian is a fun, flavorful barbarian path involving reaching out to the spirits and using those spirits to interfere in battle. Honestly, the strongest mechanic they get is the very first one. The first creature they attack each turn while raging becomes the target of their ancestral spirits, which have a couple of effects. First off, they have disadvantage on attacks against a creature that isn't the barbarian until the beginning of the barbarian's next turn, and second, any creature they do attack other than the barbarian has resistance to that damage. Now that is pretty dang strong. If the barbarian is focusing down the heaviest hitting opponent in a group, that will really encourage that creature to attack the tank, which is something DMs usually try to avoid from my experience. Their features after that, however, leave a little bit to be desired. They can use their reaction to shield their ally for 2d6, eventually increasing to 3d6 at 10th level and 4d6 at 14th. At 10th level, they gain the ability to cast Clairvoyance or Augury, which makes sense, I guess. You can only use it once between a short or long rest, and it just really feels like an underwhelming feature to get as a frontline tank. And then at 14th level, you can damage people whenever they attack someone you shielded with your earlier feature. They take an amount of damage equal to the damage prevented, which sounds fine, but at 14th level, an average of 12 damage isn't super potent, so that capstone ends up being pretty underwhelming to me. As I was writing this, I was already struggling to pick the second weakest barbarian archetype because they're honestly all just really good. Even the Ancestral Guardian had me doubting my placement, but eventually I did decide on one, and it sucks because I really like this archetype, and one of my friends played it in the very first campaign I played to completion, so it kind of holds a special place in my heart. I am talking about the BATTLERAGER Barbarian. Again, this archetype isn't weak by any means, it just isn't as potent as the ones above it, and I'll explain why. The BATTLERAGER gets spiked armor, which is basically an item that only they can use as a weapon. While they're raging, they can use a bonus action to violently stab a creature with the large metal spikes jutting out of the armor's surface, or as we always like to call it, pokey pokey. In addition, if you grapple the creature, they take 3 damage if that grapple succeeds. At 6th level, they gain temp HP equal to their con modifier whenever they use reckless attack, so basically every turn. At 10th level, they can bonus action dash while raging, and at 14th level, they get this Thorns effect where any creature who hits them with a melee attack takes 3 points of damage. All of those are pretty strong, but definitely not as impressive as the other features barbarians get from the other paths. So why was I struggling to place this one as low as I did? In short, Grappling is an incredibly strong mechanic in 5e. The grappled enemy has to use their entire action to even attempt to escape, and they still may not even succeed. Otherwise, their movement is reduced to 0, and unless they have ranged attacks, they have nobody to attack but you. And being stuck in melee range of a barbarian who is bashing you with an axe and then stabbing you with iron spikes is just not where you want to be. Adding to that the damage bonus from grappling, as well as the durability they gain from temp HP and the Thorns effect, suddenly grappling enemies is even more effective. The next strongest barbarian path is the Path of the Storm Herald. This path gives you some fun options right off the bat. Each time you gain a level in this class, you can choose between desert, sea, or tundra. Each one gives different effects thematically based on that terrain. At the beginning, desert does fire damage to every creature around you, sea can shoot a little lightning bolt at someone near you, and tundra gives you and your allies temp HP. Later on, you gain resistance to that associated type of damage, and at 10th level, all of your allies within 10 feet of you also benefit from that resistance, which is actually pretty nuts. The 14th level feature, though, is one that I really wanted to talk about because it has some pretty wicked effects. The least impressive one is Desert, which can deal your barbarian level in fire damage to a creature as a reaction, which is nice, but nothing to really write home about. Sea, however, allows you to knock a creature prone as a reaction, which essentially means all melee attacks against that creature have advantage until the beginning of their next turn. Tundra is my favorite though. When you activate the aura using your bonus action, you can choose a creature in that aura and reduce their movement speed to 0 if they fail a strength save. No reaction necessary, it is just something you can do whenever you activate your aura. This can be so debilitating to so many creatures, and you can do it literally every turn, basically for free. You can fully immobilize a creature for an entire combat, while also giving yourself and your allies temp HP equal to your constitution modifier and resistance to cold damage. I placed this path here because it offers a lot of options, which is something I feel that the Barbarian class largely lacks in many of its archetypes. They'll usually encourage you to play one particular way, while this one opens the class up quite a bit and allows you to play a more aggressive style or a more utility and support style. Obviously, you can't swap between terrains at will, but if you know you're going to be fighting a white dragon down the line, you can basically just choose to be resistant to its breath attack when you level up. And that is, as we know, pretty huge. The third strongest barbarian path has got to be the Berserker. This is just a classic barbarian. They start off with a frenzied rage, which allows them to make an attack as a bonus action while raging. Now, this is always a big deal for any class, but barbarians get more value out of a single attack than any other martial class. The chance for a brutal critical, along with the fact that they're often using a two-handed weapon and adding rage damage to every hit, just adds so much value to having a potential third attack. Anybody who's played with a mid-level barbarian knows that this class can pack a serious punch, so adding opportunities for more attacks can be absolutely insane. Not to mention, at 6th level, while they're raging, they are immune to charmed or frightened effects and can suspend those effects if they go into rage while charmed or frightened. That is crazy. Fear is flat out one of the best ways to deal with a barbarian because it doesn't allow them to move any closer. This path gets a get out of fear free card at 6th level, which most classes don't get until much later, if at all. At 10th level, they can use an action to fear someone else, and then at 14th level, they can use a reaction to attack someone who attacked them. Again, more attacks. This barbarian had to take the 3rd spot because it simply hits really hard and is damn near impossible to contain, which makes up for one of the barbarian's biggest weak spots. This was a hard one. Deciding between these last two barbarian paths was very difficult, but looking at overall strength, I had to say the second strongest barbarian path is the Zealot. The Zealot is absolutely incredible. But the reason I put it in second rather than first is because the feature that makes this path completely absurd doesn't come until 14th level. To start off, you gain a pretty significant amount of bonus damage on your first hit every turn. 1d6 plus half your barbarian level and either radiant or necrotic damage per turn can really add up quickly. You also gain this fun little feature that resurrection spells don't require material components when cast on you. That is pretty dumb, frankly. Super strong. Completely removes the risk of dying if your party has someone who can cast Revivify or anything stronger than that. Obviously, there are house rules involving resurrection that can add an element of risk to dying, but by the book, you basically just can't die forever. And their 6th level feature is crazy too. Once per rage, you can re-roll any failed saving throw, so you basically just get the Indomitable feature every time you rage, and barbarians don't usually have any shortage of rages from my experience. At 10th level, you can use a bonus action to give give all allies within 60 feet advantage on attacks and saving throws until the start of your next turn. You can only do this once per long rest, but that is still a pretty wildly strong bonus action, especially if you have a big party. Which brings us to their 14th level feature, Rage Beyond Death. I'm just gonna read this one to you. While you're raging, having 0 hit points doesn't knock you unconscious. You still must make death saving throws, and you suffer the normal effects of taking damage while 0 hit points. However, if you would die due to failing death saving throws, you don't die until your rage ends, and you die then only if you still have 0 hit points. So, let's review. Yes, you're invincible. Damage doesn't matter, especially because one level later, at 15th level, you get Relentless Rage, which means rage doesn't end until you fall unconscious or choose to end it. So literally, the only way for you to die is for something to cast Sleep on you or find some other non-damage way to render you unconscious. That is why this path was fighting so hard for first place. They are literally unkillable, barring a few niche circumstances once they reach 15th level. Lastly, we have the Barbarian path that I think is the undisputed champion of this class, the Totem Warrior. The Totem Warrior gets to choose a different animal totem in each of their feature levels, giving them different bonuses based on the animal that they chose. Now, obviously, I have to discuss how OP the first bear totem feature is. While raging, you gain resistance to all damage types other than psychic, which just so happens to be the least common damage type in the game. Clearly, this is the feature that sets this path apart from others, because that is just insane. And you get it right away. The thing is, the other choices aren't too shabby either. Eagle allows you to bonus action dash, and creatures have disadvantage on opportunity attacks against you. Elk gives you 15 feet of bonus movement speed, and Wolf is honestly almost as incredible as Bear. Wolf gives your allies advantage on all attacks against all creatures within 5 feet of you while you're raging. You basically just give your party pack tactics, and every DM out there knows exactly how powerful that is. The next tier of totems is less powerful, fortunately, giving a lot of out-of-combat bonuses like doubling carrying capacity, super long vision with advantage on perception checks, increased travel speed, and some skill proficiencies. So, less powerful, but by no means weak. Some of those can actually be pretty huge in certain situations, and when rating a path by overall influence on a game, these really bump it up. The least impressive part of this class comes at 10th level when you can cast Commune with Nature as a ritual. Nothing special here, but you can gather some information for your party, and you can do it an unlimited number of times, which is nice, but again, not particularly powerful. The last totem feature you can get is once again quite strong. Bear gives all creatures disadvantage on attack rolls against anyone but you, so kind of like the Ancestral Guardian feature, but a lot better. Eagle gives you a flying speed equal to your walking speed, but you fall if you end your turn, so basically you can just jump super duper high. Elk gives you a bonus action charge that can knock a creature prone and deal damage equal to 1d12 plus your strength modifier. Tiger allows you to make a bonus action attack if you ran 20 feet towards a creature, and Wolf allows you to just use a bonus action to straight up knock a creature prone if you hit it with a melee attack. Like I said, all these are quite strong. Across the board, this path is wild. Pun intended. It gives you tons of options, ranging anywhere from absolutely insane combat potential to very useful out-of-combat choices as well. Some of them involve utility, others make you damn near unkillable, and others just dish out a hell of a lot of damage. Considering all of that, I think it makes this path a clear frontrunner for every Barbarian fan. That is my ranking of each of the Barbarian paths. Again, let me know in the comments what you think of my ranking, even if you disagree entirely. The next video in the series will be one of my favorite classes, the Bard. I am going to have some fun with those archetypes for sure, but until then, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you around.